the fact that this meeting is underway
Morning.
itself is already historic, isn't it?
Absolutely, William. Look, it wasn't too long ago that a former British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was calling the French little turds. And his ill-fated successor, Liz Truss, when asked by a journalist whether Emmanuel Macron is a friend or a foe, basically said the jury's out. So you could argue there's quite a bit of room for improvement in that Franco-British relationship. But it's true. This is the first such summit of this kind, at least, in over 5 years. You have to go back to January 2018 to have the French and British leaders meeting like this. And what's happened in between? Well, a lot of history. You've had the little matter of a worldwide pandemic. You've had Russia invading Ukraine, and then you've had that not so little matter of Britain tipping out of the European Union, so-called Brexit. And it's that latter issue, Brexit, which has, to say the least, put a damper on this relationship. The relationship has been completely in the dumps. It's been an abomination in recent years, and it's been hard to sort of gloss it over and come up with good photo ops. So the very fact, as you said, that there will be a summit here today, that you will see Rishi Sunak and Emmanuel Macron, all smiles and, shaking hands and sitting down for a face-to-face, that in itself is headline worthy. And they obviously have a lot of catching up to do, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with the migrant issue we were just talking about. These are two men who also are embattled on the home front. Rishi Sunak facing massive strikes at home in the UK against poor pay. Here in France, Emmanuel Macron up against an epic strike movement of his own. They are both two men who are desperate to put a brave face on this meeting, to get a few good news headlines if they possibly can eke it out of this summit. Whether they can do that is going to be a pretty tall order at this point. But officially, both sides are saying that they're billing this summit as the beginning of the renewal of a beautiful relationship.
Yeah,
Doesn't that sound nice?
It does. It does sound very glossy. But even if they can renew this relationship, migration was an issue even before things turned bitter.
Absolutely. Look, let's not mince words here. For much of the world looking in from the outside, and even for a lot of Britons, this new zero-tolerance policy in Britain on small boats arriving in the UK and turning them back, basically not accepting refugees arriving in small boats, it's really an abomination. And, NGOs, human rights watchdogs have called out Britain on this policy, saying basically it flies in the face of international law. But Rishi Sunak is really up against it at home, where, the attitudes and public opinion have really hardened on the migrant issue, and they want a lot more French help in sort of juggling it, because last year about 45,000 migrants arrived in Britain from French coasts in small boats. This year alone, it's about 3,000 and counting. But the thing is, like I said, that public opinion in Britain, the tabloid press, which has really brought this debate to a fever pitch and hardened public opinion. So both sides are hard-pressed to come up with some sort of issue. Rishi Sunak, the question is, where does he send these boats back to? He's not going to be able to send them to Rwanda. He'd like to send a lot of them back to France. For the French, that's a no-go, that policy. France is not going to take all these migrants back. What France wants is an EU solution. It wants a solution in which the migrants, if sent back from Britain under this new very hardline policy, would be equitably divided among European Union nations, the 27-member bloc. That's a policy that perhaps Sunak and Macron can work on, but it's not going to be resolved today. Do not expect any breakthrough headlines on the migration issue coming out of this summit.